You can be a politician and offend and insult your constituents, but as long as you have media behind you, maybe you're tired of being treated like a chumbolone. And I said, what does this mean where Kim Foxx is reelected? And he said, the message it sends, get the bleep out. We've become prey in our own city.
Some people can lead when the chips are down, when the pressure is great, when there's COVID in the aftermath of George Floyd. She fell apart during the crisis. That's my quick take.
Stand up, confront the liars in front of others, and when people tell you things you're supposed to agree with, and so you can end the discussion and slink away, don't.
So we are so pleased to welcome storied Chicago Tribune columnist, former editorial board member John Kass, now of johnkassnews.com, and Matt Rosenberg of WirePoints, who is also the author of What Next Chicago? Notes of a Pissed Off Native Son.
He's pissed off.
So, so they're going to share their insights here for about 30 or 40 minutes about Illinois, Chicago, and then we will have some time for a Q&A after. So, with that, John Kass and Matt Rosenberg.
Thank you. By the way, I heard a little chatter in the corner. Don't make me get up. Okay? Because they can't hear you if you talk. I know you get excited.
You gotta talk right into the mic. We gotta hear you.
Right into the mic. This is as far... I'm uncomfortable going any farther than this. All right, so can you hear me now? All right, Matt and I will begin the show. We will sing for our supper. But I first wanted to thank the Enrights for making their home available to us.
Absolutely.
And to everybody at Nutrier Neighbors. Not so we can sit around in the backyard and have pulled pork, because you can do that anywhere. But you know why? Because you show me a level of courage that is sadly needed, and a country that is desperate for it. You're standing as Betty and I were our parents, and our kids were in high school at Lyons Township at the beginning of this Jacobin, I'm sorry, can I say that? Jacobin culture war in which everything's been turned upside down. And for you to stand up for your children on the ideas of curriculum and what's important about what they learn, and knowing that your children and you will be targeted, as I've been targeted by my formerly dear colleagues of the Jacobin Tribune Guild. I'm just saying that my applause and respect to all of you. So thank you. Let's go.
Very good. I echo John's thanks to everyone, Nutrier Neighbors, and to WirePoints, where I'm just so lucky to have found a great home. So let's jump right in. Freedom to move about in the city, John. Freedom to spend our money where we would like to. Freedom to move about, to me, is one of the inalienable rights that we all enjoy. But things have changed very greatly in Chicago now, and many people from the suburbs, tourists, convention planners, the CEO of McDonald's, maybe even are very, very concerned about what it means to go out on the street. I'll leave off the recitation of all the horrible stories, but they occur almost hourly now, and you know what they're like. So, John, here's my hypothetical to you. Suppose of a winter's eve, you and I and our lovely brides decided we wanted to go down to Gene and Giorgetti and enjoy some chicken piccata and those crispy cottage fries and that great garbage salad. And we wanted to hang about with City Hall bagmen and guys who own linen supply companies and hauling companies and soak up.
You meant guys who think that they're the presidents of the unions that service those companies.
Well, yeah. Okay, thank you for that. You're right. Little nuance there. Suppose we wanted to do all that. Well, that's down at, Kinsey and Franklin, right? Right near the Merchandise Mart. So if we wanted to do that, would we do that? And if we were hesitating, why would we be hesitating? And what does that say to you about the broader situation in Chicago these days? We seem to have lost the streets, is what I'm really trying to say.
Exactly. And you pointed out in the podcast we did and a lot of the stuff you write for Wire Points, we've become prey in our own city. Let's just admit it. The elevation of Kim Foxx as prosecutor and then re-electing her, Lori Lightfoot, who I supported, we could get into the sins of Mr. Kass on supporting Lori Lightfoot and all that.
We will.
Yeah. Everybody line up and have a paddle because Dan Proft always makes the point of it. But we've become prey. And a fellow who was a contemporary of Mayor Richard J. Daley, who I refer to as the real Mayor Daley, I asked him about it. I said, what does this mean where Kim Foxx is reelected? And he said, what message does it send? And he said, the message it sends, get the bleep out. And I didn't want to believe that. But what happened yesterday in the restaurant district where a car opens up and starts shooting at people like in a beer garden right outside? I mean, this is not like 93rd and Yates, okay? And for years in my life, I've worked at a newspaper in Chicago, and I was never afraid to go anywhere in the city, any neighborhood. Like it's 2:30 in the morning. Anybody feel like some jerk chicken? There's a place on Jackson and Pulaski. Let's go. 2:30 in the morning. I don't care. I'll go. You know, how many times did I eat dinner at White Castle on 79th Street? Betty, sorry. I don't know why I gained so much weight, but I never felt unsafe. But people feel that now, Matt.
They do. And let's talk about the Safety Act for a minute. That's chewing up the scenery. We know that this is a state-level law, most of which has already been implemented. We know that it was about 750 pages plopped onto the desks of lawmakers during a lame duck session and at about 3 in the morning, and that it got rammed through in just a couple of days. The great focus right now, rightly, is on a provision that will not be implemented until January 1st, which will effectively do away with cash bail. Now, a great controversy has arisen. John, what I'd like to do is give a brief preface on that and then throw the ball over to you.
Please
okay.
do.
If I can try and distill what the debate is about, and, the fact checkers are out there, and we're fact checking the fact checkers on this one, okay? So there is a claim that there are going to be non-detainable offenses and that cash bail is really, truly forever over, and there's going to be a purge or the end of days come January 1 when thousands of prisoners even who are awaiting trial on high cash bail are let out January 1st. The counterclaim is this is greatly exaggerated, and if you read the law, you will see there are ways in which a judge can still exercise his or her discretion and hold on high cash bail before trial any particularly dangerous criminal. So as near as we can tell, from having gone through the innards of this law with the help of an assistant state's attorney in the Will County State's Attorney Office, what we see is this. There are two very high bars to letting someone out or to detaining someone. Number one, you have to prove willful intent to flee, which we are told essentially means they're on a seat in a jet at O'Hare about to take off for Reykjavik. Okay, the other thing is specific threat to a specific individual. That's very tough to prove. A guy who's just been firing his gun in the street at a whole bunch of people, we're not sure who he's a threat to. We know he's a threat to the community. So there's important weasel words in here, and there's, in my estimation, a great glossing over. And there's plausible deniability, and that's what Pritzker's spin artists and the Democratic caucus spin artists are now doing in the fact-checking articles that a compliant media is spreading out everywhere. So, John, what's your take on the information war and on the issue here, and on sort of the broader picture around no cash bail? We're familiar with low cash or no cash bail in Cook County, aren't we?
I'm a supporter of everyone who's accused of a crime to make bail if they can. The issue is the courts, because this is America, and I don't believe that there are any cases where, like as Pritzker said, a woman was jailed for 34 years at Chateau d'If for stealing a loaf of bread or 6 diapers or whatever he said. You have to steal thousands of dollars to get cracked on shoplifting. But the larger issue is the violence that the judges are to consider the threats to the community. And the threats to the community are serious. And every day, if you look at CWB Chicago, you will see case number 40. I think they're up to 40 this year so far. And last year, they had 79 such cases and 80 the year before. Cases of and someone who's been, how do they put it, the phrasing? Someone who has been charged with a crime while they've been on bail for shooting or killing or attempting to kill someone else. And the violence cascades. And the people of the city and the state should not be called racist because they're questioning what their government is doing. The other side, the hard left, guarantees or relies on the race argument to check everybody. Like, you don't want to be a racist, do you? Are you a racist? You don't want to? No, please don't call me a racist. And the most malleable of this species are white liberal reporters in mainstream media. So they will back off quick on anything. And I don't want a racial confrontation, but you know what, Matt? If this doesn't stop, if we don't get a handle on this, to at least discuss it with our neighbors, people will take their guns and start shooting people. I can't believe we haven't had a Bernard Goetz situation yet. And I'm sure we have, and we don't know it yet. And then you have total destruction and disintegration of the rule of law.
It's getting to a scary point, in my opinion, because more and more it seems you oughtn't to be out walking the streets of Chicago unless you're carrying. And we're seeing increasing incidences reported in the news. Would-be stabbing victims on the CTA stabbing their attackers back. And here we are going, yeah, you go, guy, right? Now, that's really messed up, but it beats being a victim, doesn't it? So it's cold. It's scary. It's very, very different. John, I want to shift gears here for a minute. We have a number of issues that people have brought up before the event that they're interested in hearing about. One of them is, and first I'll tell you how I've answered this. I've been asked, Matt, how in the world did Lori Lightfoot get to be mayor anyway? Now, this question is usually from national interviewers who didn't know about her background. And John, I'm going to ask you in a moment why you backed her. Yeah. So you're forewarned, but I'm gonna foreshadow.
Mayor Phyllis Maximus herself.
Yeah.
Yes.
So here's the deal. Here's what I say. Look, actually, if you looked at her civic resume and you looked at the campaign she ran, she was an extremely plausible candidate. Now picture Alderman Ed Burke, right? The dean of the city council, having just been indicted on a corruption charge right during the campaign. The main opponent of Lightfoot, Preckwinkle, was tied to Burke. Lightfoot came in, pledging to sweep the ground clean. She was the broom who was going to sweep things clean. Former federal prosecutor, put a few Chicago aldermen in jail, had some high-profile civic duties, police accountability stuff. She was eminently plausible. U of C law school grad, all of that. So my theory is she came in. Some people can lead when the chips are down, when the pressure is great, when there's COVID in the aftermath of George Floyd. She fell apart during the crisis. That's my quick take. But John, let's go back. Why were you so keen on seeing her elected at the time? And talk to us about your disappointment and dismay, I guess, a little bit, too.
Betty and I talked about this as we drove over, when I fell out with her. It was the loss of control in the city of Chicago when she allowed the looters to continue for a second time. Not only once, but twice. And then she also endorsed Kim Foxx. Now, I had a conversation with her beforehand on the phone, and this has upset some of my lefty trolls who think, oh, why are you having conversations with politicians, John? Aren't you a journalist? Yeah, that's what you do. You have conversations to know what they're thinking. And we had a debate about it, and I said, then she was opposed. She didn't want to support Fox. She knew what Fox represented, this total destruction, the circle down the drain, what you call the great unraveling. Mm-hmm. She understood that, and she was stuck in a hard and tough place. And I said, I don't care what you do. If you back her, we're done. Mm-hmm. She backed her, and we're done.
I got another one for you, John. There's a popular theory going around. I think I've even heard you espouse it, that, before things get better here in Chicago, they're going to have to get a lot worse. We can call it the bottoming out theory for shorthand. I'm not sure I buy it. I don't think I've ever bought it. And here's the thing.
Why not?
Because we're practically at bottom now. Now, suppose...
We're at bottom.
And what's happening? I think the next election will be telling, but here's a hypothetical, right? Suppose our governor gets reelected. Suppose even Amendment 1 passes, and many of you know about that. Suppose even Paul Vallis gets elected mayor, but 6 more socialists end up on the city council. We've got 6 already. Democratic Socialists of America. So nothing changes in Chicago. The predatory crime continues to spread throughout the suburbs. It's already reaching Michigan. A judge friend of mine tells me there, Chicago guys perpetrating the same kind of stuff in southwestern Michigan. It's reaching Iowa. So suppose that's what really happens, John, and the Safety Act is implemented more or less the way the majority party wants it. Won't that be bottoming out? And then, look, we've still got 12 million people in this state, 8 million in this metro area. There's a lot of jobs. People like their homes. I don't think there's a magical moment. I'm just not buying it. What's your take?
I don't think there's a magical moment. But if it doesn't change, the city's dead. And look, Wire Points, the group you're with, Ted Dabrowski, Mr. Glennon, others have been warning about a fiscal collapse forever. People are just starting to wake up to it, and it's still too late. It's too late because we've already passed the point of no return. They're just being kind. They're being kind to tell you, to encourage people. And I understand why they're doing it, because they want to encourage the good. But I'm here to tell you, we've passed the point of no return. All right? Would you tell your children today to move into Chicago and buy a house? Or what if they said, Dad, I really love Bruna's on 24th Street in Oak Lee, and there's a house around there we could get. Can you help me with the down payment? I'm like, no, sorry, not doing it. Not doing it. You want to live in Grand Rapids? Okay, I'll help you out, but not there. We're beyond the point of no return. If we elect, not we, because I'm out of it now, but if the Illinois reelects Pritzker, does everything you said, puts Kim Fox back in office, puts Lori Lightfoot back in office, doesn't change the school system, which has to be changed immediately to voucher system to keep some semblance of middle-class black people in the city. If that doesn't happen, every day it's like a time bomb, and it's just gone.
I want to ask you two related questions that follow on that.
Too depressing? Sorry.
One is, what does a worst-case scenario look like for Chicago? The other is, do we need wholesale change kind of all at once, swallow the big pill? How would that actually happen? Or are incremental changes more important? So first, what does the worst-case scenario look like for Chicago?
The worst-case scenario is the status quo. Can you guys hear me back there? Sorry if I'm slouching in the chair. Status quo is the worst-case scenario, and we've gone over what would happen. The great unraveling that you've mentioned, the fact that there won't be people wanting to go downtown to work, which is no taxes. So how do you raise commercial real estate taxes to run the enterprise called the City of Chicago? How do you do that? You don't have that. People won't go. They won't take the L back and forth, and they won't take the L now when you have guard dogs with muzzles on protecting them, and security guards, Barney Fife security guards with no bullet. Sorry, don't point a bullet. That's a worst case scenario. We have to get people to. We have to do what the people here in this room are doing. You're joining a group. You know that the left will come after you and your kids, and you're still doing it. Why? You know what, if you don't do it, what you'll lose. And the same thing with everybody in the state.
Let's go to, how does change happen? Some of this might be wishful thinking, but if large-scale change were to be engineered politically, certain things would have to fall into place. I've always talked about a bottom-up uprising, and frankly, looking at the demographics of Chicago, you've still got a sizable black population. You've got a growing Latino population, which is a fascinating group to me because they come here, they're not part of a culture of grievance, they get to work, there's a lot of family stability, quiet but important success story. You've got Asians, much the same as Latinos, and then you've got white people of Chicago who, sorry, but they're fairly hopeless, and not just the ones along the lakefront. If you go to Bucktown or Wicker Park or Albany Park, there are a lot of people who need to feel good about themselves, who, as Shelby Steele, the important black scholar, has put it, need to offload the white guilt, the monkey on their back. And so they do it through this kabuki theater that we always see. So I don't know how change occurs, but are there ways, John? Should we be thinking about incremental things like the governance reforms that Ray Lopez has proposed and that Joe Ferguson is now pursuing at the USC Harris School, likely to result in a charter commission ballot proposal That's fix the rigged rules. There's an example of incremental.
I like Ray Lopez's guts and Joe Ferguson, obviously, but I'm going full in on this premise. If there's not a manager who can manage, the city is doomed. And I don't see a manager out there except for one. The only manager I see is Paul Vallis. The only one who understands all these different parts that fit together. And if Joe Ferguson would work with Paul, they'd have a chance. But that won't happen unless two things. One, people put down the whole daily click BS and Arnie Duncan. The White Shadow's gonna come back. White Shadow, I love that show. You know, the white guy can't really play basketball. He's kind of good, but he's like a defense, pass the ball first, kind of like Duncan was when he was working for Obama. Pass the ball, play defense when they're playing pickup ball. But the city can't function that way. They have to change the rules on education. They have to do that immediately.
I'll add my 2 cents here. I think this kind of structural change, like literally burning down Chicago public schools and starting fresh without union obligations with a voucher-based system, which is just so dramatically needed, that could not happen without an uprising by Black and Latino voters. It just ain't going to happen. So how to light that fire, nobody here has the answer right now. I want to throw something out. One guy posting on a Facebook post I put up about my most recent story said, Matt, you're preaching to the crowd here. Here's who you need to talk to. And he linked me to a Facebook page, which I already follow, called Chicago Crime Stoppers. Find them on Facebook, dial in. The guy is literally just chasing the police scanner, but he's getting like 600 comments and 900 likes on every post. And the posts are like 24-year-old male shot at the corner of 73rd and Jeffrey, deceased, right? Then it's on to the next post. And the comments reflect an incredible concern about the crime and the neighborhoods and the sanctity of the city that's slipping away. So maybe there's a way in, but this ain't easy. So I just want to throw that out there. So moving forward, John, we've been asked also to discuss, the old Chicago Democrats versus the new Chicago Democrats. And I want to do that by throwing you a curveball. I think the career of Cook County Chief Judge Timothy Evans is a very fascinating career, especially if you trace him back. I want to give you my 60-second summary of what Tim Evans means to me, and then I'd like you to sound off. And I want to acknowledge an old Tribune reporter, an editorialist I think you know, named Anne Marie Lipinski, who in 1989 or 87 wrote a very penetrating sort of explainer on who Tim Evans was. So this guy came up under...
I remember us talking about that.
Yeah, we did.
Wrote it.
He came up in the 70s and 60s as an aide to the 4th Ward Alderman Claude Holman, who was part of the Silent Six, the 6 black aldermen who went along with Daley the First, right? And they got crumbs off the table. That's Tim Evans.
Daily bread. Give us our daily bread.
There you go. Beautiful.
One of them actually said that.
Then
Say that. Yeah.
when and Claude Holman was interesting because he once said on the floor of the city council proudly, this black alderman, I am a puppet for Mayor Daley. Quite interesting, right? So this is Tim Evans's political mentor, right? Then Harold Washington gets to be mayor. By this point, Tim's on the council. He's had a bunch of patronage jobs in the legal department here and there because he's got a law degree. And all of a sudden, he attaches himself to the great reform machine of Harold Washington. Then Harold dies. Tim runs for mayor. Doesn't get it, but in the end, he ends up as the chief judge of Cook County and springs on us something called bail reform. So this is very interesting. Here's a guy who started out as a hardcore machine Democrat apparatchik and ends up as a social justice crusader with the Harold Washington, attachment. in the middle. So he's thinking about his place in history, but, it's just a new machine, right, with a different political focus. That's kind of what I'm seeing and thinking.
There's a very good synopsis of Tim. Timmy, as we used to call him.
Tell us a little more about your experience with the man and what you think the arc of his career might tell us about Chicago politics.
Covered City Hall. And Betty and I splurged on a suit, okay? I splurged on a suit. It was an Armani, kind of cream-colored, perfect, perfect for this heat. I got it at Bigsby and Crothers. I show up with my new shoe, my shirt and those. Remember those things, the collar things we wore.
Closer on the mic.
And
John.
Timmy comes up and says, "Man, I like that suit." I go, "Yeah, well, I
Closer
got it
on
from
the
this
mic.
guy."
Closer.
Oh, I like
Eat
that
it.
suit.
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, here's the guy's name. Call him. It'll be good." And Burke and Verdoliak heard him do that and say that, and then they started busting him like, "I like that suit. I like that suit." And 4 weeks later, I see him with my suit on in the city council, and I said, "How did that happen?" He goes, Eddie says, Verdoliak said he couldn't afford it, but we got him some personal injury cases from CTA. And I don't know if that's true. Yeah, I know you're recording, but I'm just saying that was the story I heard. The main thing to know is that when he was running as I'm the reformer, Tim Evans, the reformer, with Vernon Jarrett and all these people screaming at Gene Sawyer to destroy him and call him an Uncle Tom race trader. They tried to destroy Gene Sawyer. They did destroy him. Guess who was the beneficiary of all that? Cui bono? Who benefits? That's what the judges ask, and that's what I ask. So who benefits? Let's see. Tim Daly became mayor after they tore each other's heads off. After they screamed and yelled, and the Wall Street Journal said it's Beirut by the lake and the blah blah blah. I didn't mind fighting. I like fighting. It's called freedom. But they wanted to go corporate. So Tim Evans becomes Cook County judge, chief judge. How did that happen? Do you think that would have happened without Richie Daley? Right? Richie Daley saying, "Okay, yeah, let's make Tim Evans a judge. Come on, let's go. Get out of my hair." And who took Tim Evans out as alderman so that he could run for judge? Her name is she of the sensible shoes. Tony Preckwinkle, Cook County Board President.
Yeah.
This is why writers are such unattractive friends, because we remember everything. All right? So Preckwinkle takes out Evans for alderman. Evans becomes chief judge through Daley's help. Verdoliak helps Evans and helps, what's his name? Gene Pincham. Another hero who's protecting. If I was a black militant, I swear to God, I'd want to just hurt a lot of people. I swear. Malcolm X was right, I think, in some respects. Okay, I'm going to read his autobiography again in the context of what these liberals are doing here. Anyway, that's my piece.
Thank you, John. This is a good point to segue to another thing we should discuss, which is what is happening with the Chicago police. Here's what I see. The environment for policing is extremely difficult. And I want to make sure that I make clear that at Wire Points, and I know, John, we strongly support police. We believe they need to be allowed to do their jobs. There are problems with management. The management has become politicized and risk averse. We also see that the working conditions are extremely difficult. There are There are a growing number of deeply concerning suicides of Chicago police officers. There's incredible attrition. There are paltry arrest rates, which we've documented at Wire Points, 5 to 10% on various crimes. There's a great deal of trouble responding to 911 calls. We've documented that as well through some public records requests. Then there are deployment issues. There's 11,500 sworn officers, the guys with guns and badges. You don't have more than 6,200 of them assigned to district beats. The rest of them are on other units. Many of those units are important, forensics, detectives, right? All
Lori
of that.
Lightfoot's bodyguards?
Yeah, that too. But we need more we need more civilian employees maybe doing some of the administrative work that sworn officers are doing. We need more of them out there on the street. So the management is a real challenge. But right now, when your arrest rates are 5 or 10%, something's gone really wrong. So how do we begin to repair the environment for policing in Chicago, John? How can that be done? Does that depend on our city's leadership as well?
It depends on the political leadership foremost and the people and the media. Mm-hmm. Look, she holds a news conference about the popcorn, the popcorn gate. Remember that? Anybody? Bobby Rush, I've known Bobby for 40 years. Mm-hmm. Bobby Rush couldn't legislate himself out of a wet bag. Mm-hmm. But he's screaming about his popcorn, and here's Lightfoot, and she knows that Bobby Rush doesn't like her, but she runs to Bobby Rush like a supplicant, holding his knees like, please, Bobby, save me, save me. And she shows up at a news conference condemning police officers for going into the office and eating Bobby Rush popcorn.
This is during 2020, during the riots that were tearing up the city, and police officers were working incredibly long hours, and they took a break in a congressman's district office, and a few of them fell asleep on a couch, and
Right.
that became a big scandal.
The guy who fell asleep, one of the guys on the couch, is from Mount Greenwood, like so many of them are. Okay, either Mount Greenwood or up on the northwest side. This guy, middle-aged guy, exhausted, 18 hours, with a map of Ireland on his face, sleeping. Mm. And you think a guy from Mount Greenwood, savvy in politics, would sleep in a congressman's office if he didn't get the okay from the congressman to come in and chill? Mm-hmm. So it was all bull. Mm-hmm. And she let it happen, and she attacked them. She didn't have the commander of the 2nd district, that was the district. The 2nd district commander was not there when she had her news conference on Bobby Rush popcorn. What does that tell you? Mm. The boss of the district who makes the orders and says, yeah, go to Bobby Rush, protect his popcorn, and maybe eat some or something, sleep. Mm-hmm. He wasn't there. So the whole thing was phony from the beginning. And the media went along with it, and I kind of mocked it, but the people of Chicago thought, oh, it was terrible. You shouldn't sleep and eat the congressman's popcorn. And that was exactly the wrong thing to do. Mm-hmm. But it's that kind of thing over and over, like Adam Toledo and the let's get rid of, it's all reactive, okay? Mm-hmm. Let's get rid of police foot chases. Mm-hmm. Let's not chase the bad guy. And not only that, let's not, if we're in a car and they're in a car, let their car run away. Don't chase them. But they're attacking people in Wicker Park now. There's a robbery crew going. They're not afraid. Mm-hmm. They're not afraid. And as they get even more bold, they're acting out this sort of, what is it, like they're 16, 19 revenge fantasy? What is it? Where it excuses this behavior? I don't know what it is. I'm trying to figure it. The people of Chicago are the prey animals. And this is not, you cannot have a society, either a country or a city, if the laws, if there's not equal protection. under the law. So then somebody gets a gun. And then that person gets a gun and scared and maybe pulls it out and they're afraid and they fire and somebody across the street gets shot. And then that shooter gets dragged by the hair to prison with Kim Fox and Tony Preckwinkle screaming hallelujah behind them. And I don't know if that is going to improve the city or the county one bit.
So, John, I want to share with you and the audience and get your reaction to a couple of things I picked up when I came back here in 2020. Some of you know that I lived here 30 years. I moved to Seattle with my lovely wife, Patricia, the stellar hiker. She's there and back. But I came back in 2020.
Where's Patricia?
Patricia, give us
Hi,
a
Patricia.
wave. Yes. The light of my life. Truly, mother of our children.
She puts up with him.
She
And
puts
that's
up
awesome.
with me. Inspires me too. Came back in 2020 because my city was blowing up. And I moved
that
into
great book.
Bridgeport for 6 weeks. That was a real eye-opener. Went down to the South Side to do field work for my book, What's Next Chicago. And yeah, you should buy it. It's on Amazon, okay? All right? My name and What's Next Chicago. Serious. And I talked to black people. I went into their homes, people like Latasha and Ron Fields, all kinds of people, folks in Englewood, folks all over. And what I heard again and again was the thing that white liberals never want to talk about, which is, look, yeah, you got to be serious. You need a mother and a father in the home. You got to pay attention to school. You got to follow the law. And no, we don't want to raise no hoodlums. It's pretty simple. This is out there, and I realize what we're suffering from in this city is the tyranny of the minority. So when you go into African American communities on the South Side and the West Side, I did some unofficial math. I think, heck, about 95% of the households there, they're living an upright life. They're really trying. It's the 5% that's the problem. But we can't talk about two-parent households. We can't talk about expecting something. And I guess where I land on this, John, and then I want you to sound off, I remember watching a forum on Zoom, December 2020, with Shelby Steele, Robert Woodson, and Varney and Varma Volker, two former black disciples who, after they served about 10 years in a big drug bust, got out and chose the straight path and are making a good amount of money running a transportation service, right? And they were all kind of agreeing on this stuff. And Shelby Steele summed it up well. He said, we know white people are serious when they're asking something of us. And what gets me the most is when I see, oh no, we can't have standardized tests anymore because they're racist, because the outcomes are wrong. And we get to this theory of disproportionality. You've all heard about that, right? Watch out for that stuff. It started in our universities, and reach for your wallet. When you hear about disproportional outcomes, it's just another way of saying we can't hold people of any color to the same decent standards. So those are some of my reflections after walking around the South Side and trying to dial into some of the issues in those communities. What are your own thoughts on that whole ball of wax right there, John?
It was really good, Matt. We don't have many expectations. All we really want to do is get out of life, pay our bills, take care of our kids, hope the kids go on and do well in school, maybe meet a nice girl, a nice family. I mean, is that a lot? I mean, am I really asking for the moon? Am I asking for special? Am I asking for like a villa in Martha's Vineyard where I could, hug the immigrants I'm kicking out, and hug them and then retweet it? Oh my God, I love them because hate has no home here in Martha's Vineyard. Oh man, aren't you glad they're gone now? We finally got rid of them. It only took us 24 hours. I'm concerned about the state and the city and the country. And I just listened to Victor Davis Hanson on the way over. And he was talking about the FBI, and I have friends in the FBI. And he was talking about, did you ever think that the FBI, that you would think that the FBI would lie about a president or lie about a FISA warrant? Now, these are guys, I know these guys, some of them, who've risked their lives and worked very hard to protect and follow the law. We are in a bad place as long as if we don't stop and challenge every assumption. We're in a very bad place. And I don't want to hear anybody talk about Civil War, because I was born 10 years after the Civil War in Greece ended. But I know one thing, my family never talked about it, because it was so brutal and so angry and so ugly that people who survived it could not talk about it. But we're on the edge of that. And we have to stand and challenge every assumption. Like, what's this disproportionality horse you're talking about? What is that? What do you mean? What do you mean the lady's going to be in prison because she stole the diapers for 6 months? What woman? Show us the person. Tell us who that is. Where is it in the law that says that you steal diapers and you're going to be in prison for 6 months? Where does that? Who says that? Governor, mayor, county board president. We have to challenge, and it's either that or leave. And there's no place to go.
So, Beth, do we want to throw it over to the audience now
Yes.
for some questions?
We would like to do that. So if people have questions, raise your hand. And questions, not statements, please. We will we'll get the mic to you, and we'll just do a little bit of probably mic jockeying here. So, sir.
Testing.
The two problems with the schools, the first is that you've got numerous Chicago schools that are operating at 5% capacity, 10, maybe 20. What kind of a business would do that? And as I understood it from your reporting, the soonest, correct me if I'm wrong, that they'll consider closing any of these is 2024. Is that right?
Beginning of 2025, correct.
Okay, 25. And then the second concern is, how absolutely poorly these kids are learning. You have some that meet current standards at 2%, 1%, maybe 5%. How did we get? You don't have. It's more of a hypothetical question. How did we get to where the school board and the union leadership holds the city hostage like they apparently do to get away with this?
I think the answer is that accretion and retention of power is the thing that really drives almost everything. That outcomes, actually, for all our concern about disproportional outcomes, we don't care about the results here. We found, and I want to take a minute to doff the chapeau to the entire team at WirePoints, our founder, Mark Glennon, our president, Ted Dabrowski. And he's going to hate this, but our boy wonder and senior data analyst, John Klingner, absolutely. The reporting that our team was able to do on performance data, actually at schools across Illinois, and dig up the WirePoints report on achievement scores in nearly every district in the state. It is absolutely shocking. So, Dan, you're zeroing in on those issues of performance levels and accountability is bingo, direct hit, Dan, and it's a statewide problem. We found that the achievement test scores on math and reading are just horrendous. We also found that a great many schools are empty. The city has a 70% capacity threshold, CPS does. If you're under 70% of your seats filled, it's not good. And you should be considered for closing, you being a school. And that's Chicago Public Schools' own criterion. Well, we found out that 55% of their schools did not rise to that level. In other words, more than half of their schools are too empty. Then we found that half of them, or a third of them, are half empty. And then there's ones, and Ted and John particularly documented this in a separate piece, a follow-on piece. There's ones that are 5 to 25% full. So you got a school with like a capacity of 1,000 seats, and there's like 45 students. So how did this happen? Yes, the Chicago Teachers Union and the state legislators did this. So there's a moratorium on Chicago school closures until 2025. There's also a ban on charter school growth. And the union levered Chicago into that. They levered Lori Lightfoot into it. And they've levered us into a lot more, including one of the most liberal collective bargaining contracts there is. We're one of only 13 states where teachers have almost carte blanche to go on strike, and people are leaving the system because of that. And we've documented, too, the enrollment decline. So all the indicators are wrong. Why is no one held accountable? Again, I come back to the accretion and the retention of power. John, do you want to add anything to that?
All what you've said, both of you, takes place in an environment where there is no challenge to status quo or to the thinking. This thinking is never challenged. And that's because media is part and parcel with this problem. And you can be a politician and offend and insult your constituents, but as long as you have media behind you and columnists and others in editorial boards, and we know what you know what it is when you read it and who doesn't challenge, and that's what you get. Joe?
Hi, I was wondering, in these coming elections, we have 22 and then 23 and then our presidential. Do you think that the issue of abortion will smother out all these important issues we've been discussing this afternoon? It's certainly going to be the centerpiece of Pritzker's campaign, and I'm wondering if everything else will be pushed into the background because of this one issue.
They want it to be the issue. They want it to be they don't want you to think about inflation, crime, your schools. They want, and you know what? The Republicans won. The people will decide in the states under the law. The people who actually support the Constitution are the Republicans who opposed abortion. They want the people to decide state by state. And so if you don't like abortion rules in that state, go to the other one. You want to live in a place that allows up till the death, the birth, like the day of birth abortion people? You want that state? Well, that you can move there because there'll be plenty. I don't understand, but it's the demagoguery. Again, as long as you have a media to gaslight the people, you'll be able to succeed.
Let's see, who else?
Thank you. There is an opportunity, I think, this fall for voters to send a very important message about power arrangements and power structures. Not only are we voting on the statewide offices or important races like Supreme Court in the 2nd District and the 3rd District, the county-wide races and so forth, but on the ballot this fall is an effort to lock in the power displacement in Illinois. That's Amendment 1, the so-called Workers' Rights Amendment. I wonder if you could take a moment and talk about that.
I think the man who, Ted, you're nominated.
He's written
That was not part of the deal. So the first thing I might say is everybody has got some Amendment 1 language on the table. So I know there's a QR code that will take you to a WirePoint site. Yep. Joan back here has got a copy of that. And on there's a QR code that will take you to an Amendment 1 page on WirePoints. And there you can learn a little bit about the language, what it means, the pros and the cons of it, and of course, who voted for it. But Amendment 1, why everybody should be aware of this thing, and a lot of people in Illinois have no idea about it, but it's if you care about your property tax bills, or as many of you care about parents' rights, or if you care about just seeing our state ever get turned around, then you should care about Amendment 1. And I'll be brief about it, because these are the guys here to talk. Amendment 1 would basically cement the public sector union powers into the Constitution and give them massive new rights, give the union workers new rights that protect their, quote, economic welfare and their safety. Let's put it this way. We already have some of the strongest public sector labor laws in the country in favor of unions. If we put them in the Constitution like they want, and if we give them new rights, and there's an additional language in there that says no law shall diminish those rights and powers, well, then you can kiss property tax cuts goodbye forever. You can kiss having more parents' rights in schools. Now, some people want that, right? Some people in Illinois want that, which is scary. But if you want that, this is your amendment. However, if you think that they already have too much power to raise property taxes, to take away parents' rights in collective bargaining or in schools, then this is one that you want to oppose. But I'll leave it there for now. But everybody should be aware of it. Please go to our website and look it up.
And if I could, I'd just like to add my 2 cents very quickly. We have a history of rigged rules. There are a number of rigged rules right now. We need to look at them more closely. City of Chicago elections are held in odd-numbered years in February and April. We get 33% voter turnout. But when we have our presidential elections, City of Chicago registered voter turnout is 70%. Clearly, we should change state law to have our city elections at the same time as presidential elections. We do not have a legislative fiscal analyst to calculate the cost of bills the city council is passing. We need 25 wards, more like, than 50. There's a whole lot. Pay attention to what candidate Ray Lopez is saying about all this stuff, and stay dialed in to what our former Inspector General Joe Ferguson is doing at the Harris School at the University of Chicago. There will be a city charter measure for voters sometime in the next year or two, quite possibly. So.
If I can squeeze by here. I'm sorry. Gonna be tight. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Two of the very best up there. My wife reads John Kass and passes it on every day. And Matt Rosenberg, I'm going to hold up his book. This is the very best book you could read. It really covers everything about Chicago. And how do we address and turn Chicago around? For years across the country, the business leaders were involved, and they were effective. Today, business leaders across America are asleep at the switch. And when they are involved in Chicago, for example, I appointed all 11 members of the Chicago School Board, the best school board they ever had. And this needs to happen again. And I'm pleased that the CEO of McDonald's has finally stood up, and I'm trying to see him and tell him how to organize again. Anyway, thank you, panel up there. You're terrific.
And I want to mention, you all have just heard from someone, Bob McGregor, who did some very important things in this city in the 70s. He's the Southwest Side Connection. One more Southwest Sider who's here, the family, lived down in Morgan Park. And Bob headed up a business group that was called in by the people who ran the city to help get things straight. So let's give him a hand for his work back then. Yeah.
About 10 or 11 years ago, a television program was produced in Chicago called Boss. And it took on the task of explaining and portraying how Chicago worked. It ran for 2 seasons, and then it was to run for another season, and suddenly it disappeared. It was canceled. I just wondered what the inside story was, if you know it, how the administration reacted to it, and if you have any comment.
Are you talking about the Kelsey Grammer show? It was a great show. We both liked it. I loved it for the ear. Anyone see the episode where the Danny Solis character takes the ears from his idiot nephew and presents them to the mayor of Chicago in a mahogany box with sort of a velvet case?
Remind us, where did the ears
So
come from?
what happened is the idiot nephew is, again, I don't know if it's Danny Solis, it was an actor, but the idiot nephew was working on a construction crew at O'Hare. The mayor of the Kelsey Grammer wanted the construction to continue. The kid found some Indian artifacts and called the media, and then they had to stop the whole thing. And so the mayor, Kelsey Grammer, grabs the idiot nephew by the ear in his office, puts him on the floor, and starts screaming at his patron, whoever it is. Could be Danny Solis' character. Could be Danny Solis, who has his own issues now. But I love that because the character of the alderman presented the severed ears to the mayor, like in a box. It was very discreetly done. And it was sort of like a smile on Kelsey Grammer's mouth. Thank you for this token of appreciation.
All right. Now we know what to all ask. Do we have one more? Okay.
And ends up in jail for 6 months. I look around and I know these are all people who understand what's going on. They're all going to vote come November 8th. But we have a force of people here who can do more than that. And you have seen Chicago, and you know how the elections go, and you know what works and what doesn't work and what resonates with people and what type of activity people can get involved in that can help and make a difference. And we have all of these people that, in addition to voting, could do something else. And I'm just curious, from both of your points of view, what are some things that people like us can do in addition to coming to events like this, talking to our neighbors, and voting on the 8th?
Test, test. Oh, here we go. Well, John, take a whack.
What can you do? I'm really not a organizer. Stand up, confront the liars in front of others, and when people tell you things that you're supposed to agree with, and so you can end the discussion and slink away, don't. They'll be like, look, I had written when he ran first that I didn't think that Donald Trump had the temperament for the office of president. But I'll be damned if I'm going to let some Jacobin troll back me off the position, because the policies were appropriate and workable, and they were logical. He was the worst. He wasn't an authoritarian creature. I mean, he couldn't organize a coup if he wanted to. I mean, look at what happened throughout the administration, all these leaks and the infighting. The silky was Barack Obama, all right? That's the silky. Those are the ones you have to worry about. Stand up and just challenge them. And if they say, this candidate can't win, but Arnie Duncan, the White Shadow's coming, maybe you want to challenge that too. Maybe you're tired of being treated like a chumbolone.
Yeah. I'd only add to that a few things. Identify good candidates to run for office. Fund them. Use your constitutional rights to give campaign contributions to good candidates. Take the same approach to the state legislature as to the Chicago City Council. And then be a communicator. Use social media. Be a communicator. Spread the word. Talk to people about the Safety Act once you figure it out with the help of wire points. And then be a nerd. Get into the innards of policy. Be able to hold your ground. That dovetails exactly with what John was saying. Don't back down. Don't back off, but know your stuff. That's the only way. And I'll repeat a mantra that my colleague Ted invokes often at wire points. You know, how do you appeal to the persuadable center or the persuadable center left? Never forget that. So framing matters. That's part of the being a communicator part. So that'd be my 2 cents on all this.
Wow.
I wanted to make a comment about the Safety Act. I did call my chief of police, who spent 20 minutes talking to me about it. So I know you guys are talking about Chicago. I obviously don't live there. But wherever you live in your community, contact, especially around here, your chief of police is going to talk to you. Talk to them. Know that you're backing them, but you have to know how they're going to protect you or how you can protect yourself. They need to hear from people that they're concerned so that they can go back and say, hey, you know, I've got a whole community here that says that I can't protect them. And that's what they need to know, and they need to know that you have their back. Sorry.
That was
Thank
great.
you. No.
Thank you. Right on.
And because Carol Ann lives here, she gets the last word. No, thank you. Please join me in thanking John and Matt for an amazing conversation. Outstanding.
Oh, I forgot one thing. May I please just have 1 second? My favorite character in The Godfather was Don, what was his name? Don Barzini. And he said, a man can charge for his services. After all, we're not communists. And I love that because I'm not a communist. And so in that spirit, I invite you all to subscribe to johncassnews.com. Thank you.
And Wire Price, thank you. Please stay until 7. There's more drinks and desserts. Thank you, everyone, for coming.